Good evening, all, and welcome to this very special event on International Women's Day. We have before us a very exciting session ahead. And for those who don't know me, my name is Mini Kurian, and I am an alumna of the University of Bristol. I am a writer, researcher, and publisher. And I graduated from Bristol in 2015 with a master's in ethnicity and multiculturalism. And I'm really glad to be here. And now we move on to this evening's session. I am delighted to be joined by two wonderful participants. Uh, Rhea Singhal, who's the founder and uh, CEO of Ecoware, which happens to be India's first and largest sustainable packaging company. And we also have with us Tanvi Mallya, who is the founder of Tanvi Mallya ElderCare Services. Both are alumni of the University of Bristol. A big welcome to both of you. And Rhea graduated in 2004 with a bachelor's in pharmacology. And Tanvi graduated later in 2013 with a master's in neuropsychology. Yeah. And I'm really happy to have both of you with us. May I, as you know, the theme for the evening is the emerging identity of the Indian woman. But before we begin, could I request you to tell us a little bit about yourselves and about the work that you've done? Rhea, would you like to begin?
Sure. Thank you, Minnie, and good evening, good afternoon, everybody, for everyone joining in through different time zones. It's an absolute honor to be here today. And I just want to say, happy Women's Day. I feel like every day should be Women's Day, but I suppose that's a different conversation altogether. Minnie, thank you for the introduction. As Minnie mentioned, I graduated from Bristol in the University of Bristol in 2004. I studied pharmacology, after which I went on to work at Pfizer in the UK for about 5 years. And I think now everybody knows Pfizer because of COVID, so there's no need to go into that. In 2009, I left India. I left the UK and I moved to India with my husband. And I had decided I'd had enough of the pharma world. I wanted to become an entrepreneur. When I got here, I was absolutely shocked to see the amount of plastics people were so freely using. And the fact that we had no waste segregation or waste management systems, right? We still throw all our waste in one dustbin. And that was just absolutely alien to me, having grown up between Dubai and the UK. And I just wanted to create something that was safe for humanity to eat out of, and that was not going to harm the environment. Which is how Ecoware was born. I founded the company in May 2009, and what we do is really simple. We take agricultural waste that is typically used as animal fodder, or that's burnt, causing severe air pollution, and we use it as our raw material and convert it into packaging for the food and beverage industry. And the beauty of this packaging is that it's backyard biodegradable. So if you have access to a garden or a compost pit, you dig a hole, you put this product in there and you cover it with soil and it turns into soil in 90 days. So it doesn't rely on any formal waste management, and it's not going to outlive you, unlike the first plastic straw that you've ever used, which is probably still sitting in the landfill somewhere. And it's made out of plant fiber, so it's 100% plant. It carries no additives or binders, etc. And it is the most natural thing that you could eat out of, really. That's Ecoware, and that's what I mean. And we've got an extensive range of tableware, which includes bowls, cups, plates. We service. You'd find a product like ours anywhere basically where foods can be used in bulk, right? So whether we're looking at the airline industry, whether we're looking at travel foods, whether we're looking at food courts, quick service restaurants such as Starbucks, Cinnabon, large-scale office canteens. Pre-COVID, we did a lot of events, and then we retail as well online on Amazon as well as offline. We're really proud of the impact that we've created with Ecoware over the last 11 years. which has been threefold. From an environmental perspective, 100% of our revenue has been derived from a circular economy model. Just in the last 2 years, we've displaced over 100 million pieces of single-use plastic in the food and beverage sector. From a social perspective, we create an industry that never existed before. We've created jobs. We employ over 120 people, out of which 30% are women, and that's something that we're constantly working towards improving. And from a health perspective, you've just got fewer people using plastic, so it's definitely healthier for you and the environment. Moving forward as an organization, we're really excited about the growth opportunities and around sustainability. We want to help other industries as well, help reduce their plastic footprint. And we're working with e-commerce, we're working with the medical industry. And we look at different types of raw material all the time. So India is rich in biomass. So we're constantly seeing what is it that we can use to help improve farmer livelihood. And the third is job creation. So, and that's something that's very passionate, that I'm very passionate about and close to my heart, especially after 2020. Because, with our scale, we want to create more employment, especially for women. So that's us in a nutshell, really.
Thank you, Rhea. I mean, that was fascinating, and what an unconventional, what a very useful field to be in. Thank you so much. And may I now request Tanvi to tell us something about yourself?
Thank you, Mini, and thank you, Rhea. That was wonderful. That was quite inspiring to learn as well. Hi, everyone. I'm Tanvi Mallya. It's an honor to be here. It's really humbling to be here, and I'm so excited to be able to do this with everybody, with all of you. Today, I am a neuropsychologist. I did my master's in neuropsychology from the University of Bristol in 2012 and moved back to start working with the elderly. After about 2 years of moving back is when I started my own organization. Now, that works with elderly mental health. It's called Tanvi Mallya's ElderCare Services. Back in 2012, when I moved back, there was very little to do, that catered to elderly mental health. It was almost a topic that was not spoken about, that was not addressed in the larger, sort of community. When we did speak about aging, when we did speak about the elderly, we tended to focus, and we still do, a lot of our attention on their medical needs or their logistical needs. That intention or that sort of acknowledgement that there is more to them than just their medical needs was something that I think is getting better today, but we're still not quite there. As a country that is likely to have the most number of people over the age of 16, 20 years, I don't think we're prepared. And my organization it has been one of the first ones to start something to address this gap. What we started with back then was, an at-home care service, which was subscription-based. And we started working with people, providing, companionship. Another issue that I noticed back then was, when old age was accompanied by any kind of a neurodegenerative disorder. So, for instance, if there was dementia or, Alzheimer's or any other kind, or if there was Parkinson's. And what would typically happen is a family that has an elderly with that disorder, whether it's diagnosed or undiagnosed, would be at their wits' end, wouldn't know how to deal with it because there was no awareness. So, not only did we need to address the emotional needs of the elderly, we also needed to train families, because what was happening because of this is a lot of families chose to, maybe say, chose to look for an nursing home for their elderly, because they wouldn't want them there, but because they didn't know how to deal with the challenges that accompany the disorder. So what we eventually also started doing is helping families and assisting them to sort of plan care aging in place is something that, is a trend that even the world is heading towards, where we're trying to integrate people, into the community and not isolate them. And I think that's what, TMECS, my organization, works towards as well. We started with that. Now, we're in the works, towards working on uh, initiatives that help people that have retired build a second career. We're now also trying to work more on a healthy aging sort of a dimension. And it's an all women organization. So, all my staff is entirely women. My team is entirely women. And we started in Mumbai, but due to the pandemic, because we were, we had to transition everything online. We're now working with, cities across the country, and I think that's wonderful, because that has really helped with access. This is a cause that's always been very close to my heart, and I'm very happy that I am able to do something in this space. I think one of our one of the feathers in our cap was also when a very prestigious college in Bombay recently introduced a master's degree in psychology, and I think it's the first course of its kind in India that I'm teaching at, which is, where they have a module that's focused on counseling caregivers of the elderly and a holistic intervention for the elderly, which I think is great, because not only are we working at awareness, but we're also trying to build a workforce, in this area. And I'm very happy to be associated with that. So I think that more or less, sums up our work. And over to you, Mini.
Yeah, thank you for that, Tanvi. It's it's the kind of service that is absolutely required and necessary in this vast country of ours. And you were so right about educating people on the need for this service too. Um, I'd like to now move on to our actual discussion. The theme for this evening session is about the emerging identity of women in India. And I admit it's a very contested notion, because India, in a sense, is a nation of paradoxes. We have the past spilling over into the present. We have the old and the new coexisting. We have, tradition and modernity kind of enmeshed in a very complex web. So it's against this backdrop that we're really looking at the emergence of women and finding their place in the sun. And I'd like to pose the first question to Rhea. See, when we talk about women in positions of leadership or entrepreneurship or management, it is against, they're still set against the constraints of the kind of conditioning that women have been, exposed to. There's opportunity inequality to a great degree. There's gender, ideology that they have to deal with. There's, patriarchy, which is kind of overwhelming. So when we say the emerging identity, and so how much change is actually happening, and how do we judge that? What do you think? To what degree have things changed?
So many, I think that things are changing, certainly. Right, we are seeing, more and more networks align with not just NGOs, the government, as well as the private sector, right, to streamline initiatives where you encourage girls to get educated, to come into the workforce, to contribute to the economy. And when you look at also just retention of women, right, because somewhere along that career ladder they drop off and we do lose them. So I think there's a lot more, there's certainly more conversations and initiatives that are happening to be more inclusive. You certainly see that definitely on the urban side, right? I think also what's great to see is there's a lot of work being done to empower rural women as well. There are some fantastic entrepreneurs that are helping enable and empower women in rural India so that they can also earn, they can also contribute to the economy, they can provide for their families and their homes. I can tell you from my perspective, like I have a factory out in Greater Noida in the northern state of Uttar Pradesh in UP, and when I started this unit, particularly in 2014, now we had no women that worked for us. It's taken a lot to create a culture of trust. So we had 100% men. I think there was trust that was built over time. We were trusted as employers. They then brought maybe their wife or their daughter or whoever it was, and we said that we will employ, we will give jobs. We've got initiatives like flexible working hours. We're upskilling women. I'm very clear about equal pay. So there's a lot that we're doing, and it's taken us a while to get up to that 30% number, but there's a lot more activism that's happening about getting women. Yes, all the obstacles that you mentioned do exist. There is no doubt about that. But I think there's a lot being done to help empower women to overcome these obstacles now. So, and I think the concern is especially after 2020 and COVID and the impact, that we've seen, because we obviously know the impact of COVID has not been gender neutral. We don't want to regress. We don't want to lose the women that we had brought forward that may have been affected by COVID and lost their jobs, etc., especially in the service industry. So I think there's a lot more awareness that's definitely happening, and hopefully we will make that progress quicker.
So it also seems to me that there is a need for more entrepreneurs like you and like Tanvi, who employ a lot of women in your work. And in Tanvi, would you say that in your line of work, having more women in the workforce or in your group, has that made any palpable difference in your line of work? You said it's an all women.
Yes. Mini, the reason also that it's all women is there are multiple reasons why. So psychology as a subject, of course, is changing now. But because we need people who are psychologists, it's a subject that most women tend to go for traditionally. That's one reason. But a greater reason also is because the elderly that we work with, we have to see what they're comfortable with, and women tend to live longer. Almost like 85% of the clients that we work with are women. Yeah, so it just is more comfortable for the elderly when it is usually a person of the same gender, has been our experience. Of course, it's not a decision that we make for every individual. It's something that the family and the elderly can kind of indicate, and a team member is selected accordingly. But yes, certainly these two are the primary reasons that we have women, and more so also it is I think with respect to I agree, and it's very similar with Rhea's setup in that sense that we've always had very flexible working hours. We're as an organization, we've also never been the kind to tell our employees exclusively that you can't work anywhere else, because this is a field that is one where the more you do, the better you get at your role. So for instance, if I have a team member that is also teaching in a college and also doing multiple other things, maybe working at an NGO or something like that, it just ups
you feel
the
that there is a
amount.
synergy between the activities.
Certainly.
So
the one thing that we do stress on is transparency. I've had team members that have worked with me for 4.5, 5 years, because we're only 7 years old, 7 years old, and it's it we have been, whether it is an ailing family member, whether it's a life transition in terms of say marriage or something like that, which really ideally shouldn't matter, because when men get married, there's nothing really that changes for them professionally. So there's no reason why we as an organization need to treat women differently if that transition sort of happens in their life. So I think on that scale, we've always been, and we will continue to be, very flexible.
All right. So, Rhea, I wanted to ask you, because you said that your factory is in Noida, and so in India we have this conversation, or we have this whole narrative around safety and mobility, and how that. And I was wondering how that could hamper opportunity. When we talk about women reaching out for opportunities to join the workforce, so does it matter where you live, where you come from, whether it's a small town, a village, or a city? How do these things come together? Safety, mobility, opportunity.
So, I've particularly looked at this aspect from a manufacturing perspective, right? Because I'm very passionate about increasing the role of women in manufacturing. And because we always saw that when you look at the school results and the board results, they're all girls, but we lose them. We don't know what, and we're not seeing them in manufacturing. We're not seeing them in STEM. And we had to stop and think why. And I know that from a manufacturing perspective, it is not perceived to be, a factory floor is not perceived to be a safe place for girls and for women to work, right? So safety is paramount. Again, the accessibility to where you are. So transport to the factory, back, that's always a concern for families. And I think, what we saw that helped with behavioral change was actually getting the family to, it's almost, I wouldn't say an open house, but it's almost like they come and they see that, okay, there is safety, there is trust, the employer is being responsible, and it's safe.
That's an important point, right? The responsibility of the employer. Because perhaps would you say that we need more awareness around that subject? We need more education, in a sense, about, creating a safe environment and the need for that. And also changing a little bit of the mindset towards women working in manufacturing.
No, we definitely, we definitely need to do more. There's no doubt about that. But I think what I found very interesting when I dug deeper into this is that the issues are different across the country. Mm-hmm. So in the South, we will see that there are definitely more women in manufacturing. There are more employers actively looking also for women in manufacturing. Their numbers are just far better. Right. Whereas it's not like that up in the North.
Why is that? Why do you think that difference?
I wouldn't say I would. Okay, look, there's definitely larger scale industries. When you look at larger scale factories that we've seen in the South that have come in, foreign brands, they've just been more progressive. They've taken that initiative. And I think to support and to enable more women to come in and work at their factories. We've obviously seen larger industry players as well do a really good job, like Tata, etc. Mm-hmm. But I think, what we need to focus on is it's almost like a uniformity in terms of policy across all sizes, right, of businesses. So whether you are large or whether you are a small enterprise or whether you're a medium enterprise. And I think that's the gap that we need to fill. So, and I think it's responsible. And I think, like you said, responsibility as an employer is very, very important. So also you have to be inclined to have women work in your factory. And I think that's a game changer. Not everyone is inclined to do that. If you are a large public company, you have to report your numbers. If you're a small, medium enterprise, you're almost allowed to just get on with what you need to do, right? You're not accountable to outside stakeholders. So I think the inclination to provide opportunity is also important, and to make that change. I can tell you, just to it's a cultural change within the organization that has to come from senior management and senior leadership, because even once the women are in your organization, they need to be treated fairly by everybody,
which is an ongoing kind of battle here, like elsewhere. But Tanvi, for instance, in your work, there are so many things in India that we need to address in terms of just having a conversation around those topics. For instance, in the field of looking after the elderly, there is this deep silence around issues of mental health, and there is a resistance on the part of both community and family. Actually take your family member and ask for help, because there's this stigmatization that's attached to mental health and its treatment. So have you faced that in your line of work?
Yes, Mini, certainly, and I think the stigma, stigmatization is definitely a challenge. But I think, especially when we're talking about elderly mental health, what is a bigger challenge is the lack of awareness. So, most families, most educated, well-meaning families a lot of times do not really identify or fail to identify the
This
emotional
is
and the cognitive needs of the elders in their family, or as a community we often fail to identify these needs of, say, a neighbor or somebody that lives by themselves. And what this does is, it often delays diagnosis, which compounds the problem. It is in I don't think there have been any studies to back this, but in India, at least in my it's been my observation that uh, elderly women, suffer the brunt of this a little more than men do. To give you an example, what typically happens is, especially in couples of that generation, the men tended to be a lot older than the women, or older than the women, even if not a lot. And because most women also from that generation were or are housewives, have been housewives, although the men have retired from their jobs, the women have not. And they end up very organically then stepping into this role of the caregiver for the husband. So we've seen very often in our work that a man, the husband might be degenerating, might have dementia, might not have any, dementia, might have other health concerns, but the woman would end up taking care of the elderly. And because the family can see her being able to do that, it's almost dismissed that, that there is, no emotional or cognitive need or issue there. And very often,
issue with
as
the
soon
woman.
for the woman, yes, and as soon as the you know husband passes away, it's to the family it seems very sudden, that, oh, it's because of trauma, or it's because he's no longer there. A lot of times it's not just that, the issue has persisted for many, many, many years before
Mhm.
it actually is identified. I think ageism is I mean, ageism is everywhere in a lot of places, but I think one of the biggest issues, or one of the big it sort of compounds, like I said, diagnosis quite a lot. So we do not diagnose in time. We tend to
Yeah.
think that somebody sorry, Minnie.
No, 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 no. What you were saying was very interesting, but I wanted to ask you something in the sense that when we talk about ageism, there's this whole role playing that is suggested, and which brings us to a question that when if you look at the theme for today, we are talking about the emerging identity of women. So we need to look at what that identity is. Are we looking at an identity that is ascribed to her just because she is a woman? And or are we also looking at an identity that she herself is seeking and that she's aspiring towards? So should we discuss that as in, what are the constraints in being an appropriately good Indian wife, mother, daughter, daughter-in-law, and how does she navigate that terrain and balance her work? The strain must be enormous. What do you think, Rhea?
How the question of balance is it's a
Question of balance, yes.
interesting question. I think from my experience, I think boundaries are very important. I have, and it's taken me time to build them. I'm hands up and being very honest.
Yeah.
I try not to check my emails after a certain point. If I'm home with the kids, I'm home with the kids. If I'm at work, I'm at work. And I think boundaries, routine became even more important last year with COVID and lockdown, especially with all of us working from home, schooling from home and living from home. I think we all had to be in our routines, doing our thing. Otherwise, everyone just fell apart, basically. I think me time is really important. I very strong believer that take out that 45 minutes in a day to do something that you enjoy and that works for you, and it helps you just mentally reset. For me it's exercise, and for someone else, it might be art or listening to music or whatever it is, but make sure you do that. Work-life balance, I don't know anyone who's mastered it. I can tell you I'm still work in progress, but these are things that I'm trying.
But would you agree that for a woman, the burden of expectation is higher than it would be for a man in terms of, expecting her to balance it?
I think yes, the expectations are more, but I think the expectations are set how expectations are set is up to you. If you've always been the doer and the wizard at everything, then everyone expects you to do it. If you've been the damsel in distress and say I can't do it, then no one expects you to do it. But so I think it a lot lies in what it's up to you, and how you want to be perceived and what you want to do. And I think that I was one of those people who wanted to do everything all the time, but I've realized that it's really hard to be a perfectionist, and it's okay not to be, and it's fine. And also that it's okay to say no to things. Not everything has to be done, and not everything is a priority.
So I think I think here what where we are going with this is that it's a balance between a woman's agency and a woman's conditioning and constraints and social kind of expectation. But Tanvi, how important is family support in all of this for a woman to emerge? How critical is family support, especially in India?
In India, I'd say that the definition of what constitutes support is a much wider one than abroad. So I think of course this is I think I've been very privileged on this front, but I do know of a lot of women, unfortunately, who also their family allows them to work, and that support. Do you know what I mean?
The word allow.
Yeah, and they're being supportive of their careers, and of course that a lot of these, like you correctly said, Mini, a lot of these women may not have the agency to say no, or to bring work can be stressful no matter how well balanced your jobs are, no matter how well we learn to balance our lives. There are definitely and always going to be times where work does come home emotionally, and a lot of these women may not have that kind of an outlet, may not even have the time or the liberty or the space, given the matchbox houses that a lot of the country lives in, may not really even have the space to process that. So when we're talking about the family support, what really is our definition? And I think that being said, I think given the kind of conditioning we've had, given the kind of patriarchal society that we live in, I'd say that it certainly helps if your family is very, very supportive. Um, but yes, I mean, I'd say that it's more complicated. It's a complicated discussion.
Yeah, I know, I understand. And I also understand that you are referring to areas like education, healthcare. There's a whole range of things that we could support women with. And, we have a couple of really interesting questions that have been coming in from our attendees. And I think in the interest of time, we should look at a couple. Joanna Bacon asks, Rhea, could you tell us how sustainable packaging could be introduced to reduce waste in the restaurant takeaway business?
Yes, so sustainable packaging is something that can easily be used in the restaurant and takeaway business. I mean, we've been doing it over the last 10, 11 years. Our products, like I said, are made for all food types. They sustain a temperature range from -20 to 180 degrees. So very easy to use. I think it's just about, and what we're hoping is that we're seeing a lot of growth in the food and beverage space be around the organic and good for you. And we want packaging to keep up with that trend. So we want to try and create as much awareness as possible for people to make the right choices as businesses and as consumers.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Rhea. And Tanvi, you have a question. What tips do you have for individuals who are looking to start their own ventures?
I mean, I could go on, but
This
I'll
is,
try.
sorry to interrupt. This is from Asta Works. Yes.
Okay. Hi, Astha. So, as an entrepreneur, if you are bootstrapped like me, I started my business with my own savings, which frankly wasn't a lot when I began. But I think, a very important skill as an entrepreneur would be for you to be an honest, uh, yet a sometimes gentle judge of what your strengths and weaknesses are, because a lot of this knowledge might not, you might not have it when you start your journey, but these are lessons that will come to you in time. But I think it's imperative, it's rather important how much time you spend on sort of identifying these and then working on these. When I started, I had no idea what a VC does. I had no idea how investments work. I had no idea how PR works. I didn't even know how to ask for money because, again, conditioning, right? So I didn't know how to send invoices, and it just felt so guilty. But I think those are lessons that I learned along the way, and I think you know. Uh, networking is very, very important, especially if uh, you don't have to like make it to every event, but it's important that you are clear as to what it is that your product or your service, what gap it addresses, and you are able to secondly uh, present it. uh, the more you get people to know about it, the better. I personally think that if you have the means to for a very strong PR or for very strong branding, great, use it. I didn't. I think at that, what really worked for me has just been the goodwill and the kind of work that we have done, and it's been a mouth to mouth sort of a publicity that has really worked, which has then gone on and spiraled into what it is today. So I think if you bring a product or you bring a service and you stick by it, and that's great, that addresses the gap, and you ensure the quality of that, I think that's going to be your biggest strength.
Thank you. There are two other interesting questions, and we have time for them. One is from Iman Syed. He wants to know, and maybe Rhea, you could answer this. How do you think Indian women who aren't as privileged to be able to attend universities like Bristol University or have money to start a business can be allowed access to entrepreneurship?
Um, Look, I don't think entrepreneurship always comes with privilege. I think what I've seen, I work a lot with the National Commission for Women here, and we have been all around the country working, with colleges to talk about how and these aren't the elitist of elite colleges, these are just regular colleges, right? About how you can empower women through entrepreneurship. I am the chairperson of the Indian Women Network, specifically of the Northern region, and I know that we work with a lot of large private sector organizations to see, can we almost train and scout good talent and then recruit them, which gives them job assurance? Can we, how can we spend things like CSR budgets wisely, where we create an impact? So we're always looking, and we work with other entrepreneurs. Like I said, there are some entrepreneurs who are doing some fantastic things across, and it's not just urban India, but rural India also, to help enable and mobilize women. So
where do you think that comes from? Is it their own, drive, or they're looking for opportunities? And
it's their own drive, Mini, to create change, right? And to create a positive impact. You are seeing, the thing with empowering a woman here is that, and when I say here, I mean, I'm sure it's everywhere, but specifically, I see it with, with blue collar workers, is that she's gone home and she's looking after her entire family, right? And that's what makes you want to do more, because you're supporting her, you're supporting the next generation. And that's not always the case. I mean, when you look at the other side, I mean, the opposite gender, but I think also as a nation, we've realized that you have to mobilize women. You've got to be diverse. You've got to be inclusive, because unless you've collectively got everybody, you haven't tapped into all the talent the country has to offer.
That's a very important point.
You will never succeed in whatever Atma Nirbhar, Make in India, Clean India. Like, you can come up with any slogan you want, but you will always be like 100 years behind if you haven't got everybody included. So, and I think there's a lot more that's being done to now include women and girls.
I agree. That's a very good point. And there's a question from Darshini Ramakrishnan, who asks, Tanvi, you could answer this. Why do you think that women get rejected a lot even today, in spite of having a master's degree and being well trained in engineering fields? And this is from my personal experience. So, do you have an answer to that?
Darshini, I don't know if I am really qualified to answer this, because engineering is not, it's far, far, far away from, what I do and what I have experience in. I can, however, try and answer this, in a sort of a general sort of an overview. I think, coming back with a master's, especially if you're coming in from abroad, I think, of course, things are changing now, but I do remember that, when I came back, it was intimidating for a lot of organizations, especially, if a degree that you have is, not a very common one. It can sometimes be unsettling for somebody who already, is in that position. And a lot of times also, I think it's just, I think in general, I think jobs in the engineering field are have become sparse over the past few years, and I think that may be why it's more difficult, because I think companies, unfortunately, might look at recruiting, say, people with bachelors who are probably cheaper to hire. It could, as sad as that is, I think that might be what is at play.
Yeah, so perhaps Darshini is also referring to mindsets and conceived notions about women in engineering. So that's a lot that women have to deal with. And there's one other very interesting question from Abigail, who asks, how do we change workplaces that have been built to favor men, such that it favors men and women equally? I guess this is something that we've also come across in our working lives. So how does one reconstruct the workplace? What are the steps that you would take?
I think that you should have impact measurements that industry is held responsible for, and numbers that they should report on. And I think that they should be concrete. I know in India, for instance, a few years ago there was a law that said you had to have a woman on the board seat, and a lot of people just had a tick box, as opposed to the actual value that she can contribute. So I think we got to be really clear about what those parameters are, and actually hold organizations to them. And I think the second thing, in my experience, the only way things can change is that if you've got more women in senior leadership, right? And they can actually change and create a more enabling culture for other women across all levels of the organization. And I think those are the two things that I can think of.
Right. What would you say about accountability? In terms of organizations being more accountable for more fair treatment of women, gender parity in the workplace, as well as when it comes to pay. How does one, go about that?
No, absolutely. There should definitely be more accountability, and they should be. It's almost like it's a impact measurement that they should have to report on. A goal that they need to meet, basically.
Yeah, that's true. There's one other question that I think we just about have time for, which is how much do you think, this is from Judy Noble, who asks, how much do you think the caste system affects the emergence in India of increased autonomy and power for women? As in, how does the caste system come in the way or allow women to come forward? Which is a very complex question, but maybe we could just touch upon it here.
I think, Mini, it would be very privileged and very blindsided of us to say that, it doesn't. I think, I have maybe not faced, I'm privileged in that sense, but, I know and I've heard of how debilitating it can be. Because it not a lot of times, and this it sort of interlinks with the question that I think Iman had asked as well. If for somebody that does not come with that kind of privilege, they probably do not even have, say, computers to access information about a university abroad, or as many as initiatives there are in the country. They probably do not have information about that, or they don't have the kind of exposure to understand what their options are, what they can do, how they can upskill, how they can really build their careers. So and I think in that sense, yes, the caste system does play, I think, a role. It is changing. I think it's it's almost not very visible in, say, metropolitan cities, but I think the picture in more rural areas is very different. And I definitely think that it comes with its own privileges and its disadvantages. I think also that is something that I think when we were discussing this earlier, as Rhea had rightly said, I think as people who eventually rise to positions of some power, I think maybe it's only responsible to kind of try and undo that, and make information, make opportunities more accessible beyond caste. So I think
yes. So I think some of the points that come out of this discussion are, like you said, make more channels open to people. There should be more education. There should be more accountability. So all of that ties into the emerging identity of the Indian woman. And about with reference to the caste system, I think it's really impeding progress in this country. And all of us, I think many of us have strong views on the subject. And on the other hand, we also have stories of many people from marginalized backgrounds somehow fighting their way and making it. And in India, for every story that is negative and that is heartbreaking, you also have several other stories of men and women emerging and coming forward and seeking their place. So on that note, I think, we should probably end on that note. And yeah, so in the end, I think we've had a very interesting conversation, and I can't thank you enough, both of you, to, for being part of this discussion. And thank you to the University of Bristol for making this happen. Thank you, attendees. Have a very good evening. Thank you.